Vienna, 1910. In the smoke and chatter of an old café, two friends sit down across the board, a quiet young thinker named Richard Reti, and the witty, fearless Savielly Tartakower. 11 moves later, it is over. Reti will lay his own queen down beside the enemy king, a gift that cannot be refused, and the most famous miniature in all of chess will be complete. If a quiet game like this is how you'd like to fall asleep, take a moment to subscribe. There's a new one each week. Reti is barely past 20 here, still years from becoming one of the great thinkers the game would remember. In time he would lend his name to a whole opening and write some of the most admired books the game has ever known. Tartakower is the other half of the picture, clever, sharp-tongued, famous for the jokes he scattered across the board. He would become famous for his sayings that the winner is the one who makes the next to last mistake, that no game was ever won by resigning. They are friends and rivals both, the kind who meet again and again over coffee and a chessboard. This is the romantic age of chess, when a player prized a beautiful attack far above a safe little point, and a sacrifice, freely given, was the highest art of all. Vienna in those years was one of the great homes of the game, its coffeehouses thick with masters arguing over the board late into the night. This particular evening, their game runs short and swift, hardly more than a handful of moves. They met like this, often two sharp minds testing each other over coffee, neither yet at the height of the fame that waited for them both. But folded inside it is a single thunderclap, one offering at the very end that no one who sees it ever forgets. It is often called the most famous miniature in all of chess, a complete game, begun and finished, in fewer moves than most games take to leave the opening. More than 100 years on, it is still shown to beginners on their first day, and still admired by masters on their last. A tiny game, with one unforgettable surprise waiting near the close. So close your eyes now and let the board take shape in the dark. 16 pieces aside, untouched, waiting. The pale squares, the dark ones, the two armies facing each other across the middle, ready to begin. White has the move. And the first thing to break the stillness is a pawn. The king's pawn sliding forward 2 squares to e4. A single foot soldier, alone in the center, claiming the ground around it. It is the oldest opening move there is. Open the lines, let the bishops breathe. A colder, modern eye would just as soon push the other center pawn first, but this is a matter of taste, not of right and wrong. Now black must answer. And the answer is soft. Not a charge into the middle. Just a small step, the c-pawn, from c7 to c6. One quiet square forward. This is the Caro-Kann, a patient defense. Black is not rushing to meet white in the center, not yet. That little pawn on c6 is laying a foundation. Because next, black wants to push the d-pawn forward, and when it comes, the c-pawn will be there to support it. Build first, strike later. White does not wait. The second pawn comes up beside the first, the d-pawn, forward 2 to d4. Now picture it, 2 white pawns, side by side on e4 and d4. A broad wall across the center of the board. This is exactly what white wants, space, room for the pieces to pour out behind that wall. The strongest move on the board and the most natural. And now black makes good on the promise. The d-pawn steps out from d7 to d5. Straight up the board until it stands face to face with the white pawn on e4. Feel that tension for a moment. The black pawn on d5 and the white pawn on e4 are staring at each other on the diagonal. Either one could take the other. And behind the black pawn stands the little one on c6, guarding it, ready to recapture if white strikes first. So white will not strike there, not into a defended pawn. Instead, white brings out a piece, the queen's knight from b1 to c3. The first knight of the game, and it goes to work at once. From c3, it adds a second defender to the pawn on e4. A colder, modern eye slightly prefers pushing the pawn forward instead, gaining space at once. But the knight move is calm and sound, and loses nothing of meaning. So now the tension in the center tips toward white. The pawn on e4 is guarded twice, the pawn on d5 only once. If the pawns trade, white comes out ahead in the count. Black sees it, and so black is the one to resolve the tension. The d-pawn captures, d5 takes e4. It slides diagonally and lifts the white pawn off the board. The first capture of the game. This is the heart of the Caro-Kann's bargain. Black hands over the center to be rid of all tension, trading a little space for a clean, simple game. Where there were two white pawns in the center, now there is one, alone again on d4. And a single black pawn sitting on e4, deep in white's half. But it will not sit there long. White takes it back. The knight on c3 leaps to e4, scooping up the pawn. Now see where that knight stands. Right in the heart of the board on e4. A knight in the center is a knight at its strongest. From there it reaches out in every direction, squares on both wings, deep in black's position. This is the whole point of the Caro-Kann. Black has given white that fine central knight. But in return, black has no weaknesses and a clear, simple plan to develop. And the first step of that plan comes now. Black's king's knight rises from g8 to f6. And as it lands, it looks straight at the white knight on e4. One knight attacking the other. It is the most natural move on the board and the soundest. Black develops a piece and asks white a plain question at the same time. The white knight is challenged. It cannot simply stay. Now the usual thing here is quiet and clean. White trades, knight takes knight on f6, and the game flows on, even and untroubled. Or the knight just steps aside, back to a safe square, and life goes on. But this white has something else in mind. The queen comes out, from d1 to d3. An early move for the most powerful piece, and it is no accident. From d3, the queen reaches up to the knight on e4 and props it up. So white refuses to trade. The knight on e4 stays exactly where it is, now defended by the queen behind it. It is now seen as a small indulgence. The simplest path was just to trade the knights off and play on equal terms. But Reti wants more than equal terms. The queen on d3 is quietly aimed up the board towards squares the black king has not yet thought about. It is an ambitious choice, a little provocative. White is saying, I like my knight in the center and I will keep it there. And something about that queen out so early seems to invite black to push back. So black pushes back. The king's pawn jumps forward too, from e7 to e5. And with that single step, the calm cracks. Look at what e5 does. It strikes directly at white's lone pawn on d4. A colder, modern eye would rather have simply taken the white knight in the center first, keeping things quiet and equal. This thrust is more ambitious. and a touch loose it opens lines while the black king still sits in the middle, and that will matter more than anyone can see right now. Pawn challenges pawn, right in the center. Black is throwing the door open, fighting for the middle of the board, daring white to make something happen. If white takes, d4 captures e5, then the lines fly open, and that black knight on f6 is no longer tied to home. Pieces will come loose. The queens will begin to feel each other across the board. This is the moment the game stops being an opening and starts becoming a fight. Two armies, most of them still at home, but with the center about to catch fire. The white knight glowing on e4, the queen behind it, the pawns crossing swords on d4 and e5. And it is white to move, with a choice to make, and the whole shape of the game waiting on it. The board waits, and it is white to move. The pawn on d4 reaches across and takes the black pawn on e5. A small capture, the kind that is easy to overlook. But that white pawn now stands on e5, and it leans forward against the black knight on f6. And notice, the white queen on d3 and the black queen at home are now staring along the same open lines. The pieces are beginning to find each other. Black does not pause. The black queen slides out from d8 to a5 and gives check. A long, thin diagonal from a5 all the way down to the white king on e1. It is a natural check, but a colder, modern eye would first snap off the white queen on d3, a simpler road that keeps black firmly ahead. By checking instead, black leaves that white queen alive on the board, and it is exactly that queen which will deliver the blow at the end. The king cannot ignore it. So the bishop steps from c1 to d2 and closes the door on the check. The simplest answer and the best one. And quietly important, the bishop steps onto d2, where in a few moves it will stand between its own rook and the enemy king, a piece that blocks now and will spring later. Now the black queen swings forward and takes that pawn on e5. She sits in the very center of the board on e5. And from there she stares at the white knight on e4, a single step ahead of her. Black is a clear pawn ahead now, the center bristling with his pieces. Everything looks well, but his king is still uncastled, and that is the crack in it all. The knight looks lost. Surely it must move. But white has a different thought. Instead of saving the knight, the white king makes himself safe. King and rook move together, castling the long way to the queenside. The white king tucks away to c1, and the rook swings across to d1. Feel where that rook now points straight up the open d-file. This is the move behind the whole combination. Reti ignores his hanging knight entirely and instead loads the open file, pointing the rook at the heart of black's position. Hold it there in your mind on d1, patient, watching the column. Black accepts the gift. The knight on f6 captures the knight on e4. A clean pawn ahead, pieces in the open, black must feel the game is his. And yet this is the very moment it slips away. From here, modern analysis sees a forced mate. Every black reply now leads to the same quiet end. There was no saving move left. The trouble was already woven into the position, waiting only for white to draw the final thread. But look once more at the e-file, from top to bottom. At the very top, the black king, still on e8, never castled. Below him, his own queen on e5. And below her, the knight freshly landed on e4. King and queen one above the other on the same open line. And nothing of white stands between them now. On d3, the white queen has been waiting all this time. very still. And now she moves. The white queen lifts from d3 and travels the whole way to d8. To the back rank, to the side of the black king himself. Check. Stay with this a moment. The mightiest piece on the board has placed herself where the king can simply take her. Right next to him on d8. And she has no protection at all. The rook on d1 would dearly love to guard that square. But its own bishop, sitting on d2, blocks the way. So this is no clever defense, no hidden support. It is a queen offered up freely for nothing. And it is the one move that wins. Anything slower lets black wriggle free. Only this gift, given at once, holds the king fast. The point is not the queen at all. It is the square she vacates and the square she drags the king onto. She dies to open the file. And the king has no choice but to accept. The check leaves him no block and nowhere to run. His own pieces hem him in. So the black king takes the white queen. From e8 across to d8. He cradles her there, captured on d8. But see what the king has become. He has been drawn forward onto the open d file. Out in front of that waiting rook on d1. Only the bishop on d2 still stands between them. And that bishop is about to step aside. The white bishop glides from d2 up to g5. Check. Another long diagonal, g5, f6, e7, down to the king on d8. And as the bishop leaves d2, it clears the square behind it. Now the rook on d1 looks straight up the file, at the king, with nothing in the way. This is the whole machine working at last. The bishop checks on one line, while the rook waits on another. Two pieces, two fires, and the king with only one door. The black king is caught between two fires at once. He cannot remain on d8, the rook commands it. He cannot flee to e8 either. For then the rook would fall to d8, and that would be the end. Just one road stays open. Every other square is taken from him, by the rook on the file, by the bishop on the diagonal, by his own crowded men. One step, and only one. The black king steps away to c7. Off the diagonal, off the file, out into the open, searching for air. The black king, alone now, on c7. And gathered all around him, his own pieces, close and powerless. The white king sits quietly on c1, and most of white's army still sleeps at home. Two pieces awake. Two pieces are all that white will need. And the move that ends it is a soft one. The bishop travels back along the long diagonal from g5 to d8. It comes to rest just one square from the black king. Check. And here the game ends. This is mate. The same bishop that gave the first check now gives the last, returning along its diagonal to the square the queen died on. Let us walk slowly through why the king cannot move. He cannot take the bishop on d8. The rook on d1 guards it, straight up the open file. He cannot run to d7, nor to d6. That same rook covers every square along the line. He cannot slip away to b6. The bishop, from d8, watches that diagonal too. And every other door is shut by his own men. The knight on b8, the bishop on c8, the pawns on b7 and c6. His own army holds him fast, while the bishop touches his shoulder. There is no capture, no block, no escape. Checkmate. A queen given away and two small pieces left to finish the work. The whole game turned on that single offering at d8. Reti was barely past 20 when he played it, and it followed him all his life. The young man who gave away his queen to a friend and won. The gift the king could not refuse and could not survive. Richard Reti against Savielly Tartakower in Vienna, long ago. A handful of moves and an ending remembered for more than 100 years. The pieces are still now. The kings can stay exactly where they stand. The game is finished. Let the board soften, the squares fading, the lines going loose in the dark. The kings, the pawns, the long diagonals, all of it dimming like a window losing the last of the light. There is nothing left